My boyfriend's attitude towards money may be a dealbreaker for me. At the end of this year my boyfriend 22 male and I 21 female will be finishing our university degrees. We'll be starting work and moving in together, although we already practically live together. Despite renting our own apartments in separate cities, he's been living with me in my apartment for almost 6 months. He has to have his own apartment near his university since lockdowns in our country are changeable. The other day, out of curiosity, I asked him if when we start earning we'll pay our household bills, rent, utilities based on income or if we'd pay 50-50. I was always under the impression that we pay based on income. It's likely that he'll start off earning more than me. He'll have an MSc whilst I'll only have a BSc, but I intend to start contracting as soon as I can, at which point I'll likely earn more than him, although that won't be for a few years. He said that he'd always want us to pay 50-50 no matter what we earn. He also said that he'd be uncomfortable not paying his share even if he was the one earning less. This answer surprised for a number of reasons. Firstly, a few months ago I asked him to contribute slightly more to our food bill, 65/35, since he eats almost twice as much food as I do, but he flat out refused. He said it wasn't his fault that he ate more. I dropped it and kept paying 50-50. He also has not once expressed any interest in contributing to the utility bills for my apartment, despite the fact he's been living in it since last summer. Lastly, the reason I don't ask him for any rent money is because he pays rent on his own apartment, so it wouldn't be fair. However, he didn't start his contract until October. Before this contract started he had been living with me in my apartment for 2 months rent-free. I didn't expect any contribution from him during those months because he wasn't working, so he wouldn't have been able to pay, but now that I know he's uncomfortable not paying his share, it seems a little hypocritical. It seems he has an out-for-yourself attitude towards money, but only when it suits him. I don't know if I can be with someone who doesn't think of us as a team but rather two people who should fend for themselves. I'm worried about how this would translate if we ever had children together. How do couples usually handle money, especially when one person earns more? Those are reasonable deal breakers. Good for you for recognizing them. Seems worth a conversation. I'm sorry, but he's taking advantage of you. It's not supposed to be equal, it should be equitable. Huge difference. He is taking advantage of you. This should absolutely be a deal breaker for you. Wow. He's super using you. He's an absolute dick. Yeah, 100% I would drop this man. If you're worried about financials at such an early age and cannot come to an amenable agreement, I would just advise you that marriages split over financial tension. This is because personal financial ethos is an extension of our character. I don't want to draw conclusions for you, I will just say that dating is proving ground, so to speak, for marriage. Any issues will be magnified and not nullified upon I do. Take care of yourself. Girl, please dump and go. An ex of mine did this and financially took advantage of me and my family, who helped me at the time because I was taking extra hours and I couldn't get an extra job with my terrible schedule, and always was a big baby about being asked to contribute. I'm gonna put a shot in the dark and guess he doesn't do his fair share of helping in other ways, cleaning, other responsibilities, etc. I suggest taking this moment to re-examine if this can be seen in any of his other habits, because I have an inkling it might. Someone unwilling to share financial responsibility usually is unwilling to share others. Damn stingy MFERs like this are absolutely disgusting. Stinginess has got to be one of the grossest traits in a partner. I like the idea of income-based split because whoever makes less money puts more value into a single dollar than one that makes more money theoretically. In that sense, if something happened to the relationship, no one would really pay too much because the ratio in income already technically accounts to fair payments. On the situation itself, I do think he cheated you out for free housing and utilities, and that is something that should be a warning sign at the least. If you want to make it fair, let him pay for a month's worth of rent and utilities and then transition into whatever style of payment you'd like. While I was still in school and my boyfriend made quite a bit more than me, I paid one utility plus groceries, he paid everything else. Now that I make more, we do a 35/65 split of shared bills based off of income ratio. I pay the 65, it works for us. We're responsible for managing all of our individual bills and take turns paying for things that are extra, eating out, etc. I think this may be flag showing your boyfriend is rather selfish and wants to keep things on terms that benefit him. Although you mentioned he said it'll stay that way even when you make more. I have a feeling his opinion will change when that time comes. What if one of you got sick and couldn't work for a period? What if one of you took time off for a baby? What if one of you took a more flexible job to allow the other more success? What if one of you went back to school and made nothing for a while but came out a few years later earning 3x the salary? At this stage in the relationship you need to treat most things like you are flatmates. Expenses such as rent, utilities, property taxes if any, all those kinds of things, need to be split 50-50 regardless of income. Expenses such as food are more negotiable. You can barter on these and split them more based on who eats what, and how much each of you eat. Later on, if you get engaged or especially if you get married, then all income gets combined and all expenses paid from that one bank account. At this stage there would be no more your money or his money, it's all both your money, with all expenses paid from that. The question isn't, is 50-50 the right way to split expenses, because every people is entitled to work out their financial arrangements in whatever way suits them best. The question is your boyfriend acting in good faith, or is he acting like a selfish hypocrite? Honestly, the grocery thing is so hypocritical it made my brain hurt. I hope your conversation with him goes well, that he recognizes his hypocrisy, and that he changes his attitude and behavior. I have a feeling that once you start to earn more than him in your profession, the 50-50 is going to go away in his favor. You could always say, that paying your share really resonated with me. I think maybe you could pitch in for those months you were living rent-free, and maybe we should pay for our own food, and certainly the utilities. 50-50 right? If you had a roommate, you would expect that person to pay half of all the expenses, regardless of their income. So, it would be logical for the two of you to split the bills evenly, and if that is agreeable, then fine. However, if one partner is making significantly more than the other, that person should want to contribute more. It might be in the form of paying a different proportion of the rent, or it might be taking on an extra expense, such as a housekeeper or some maintenance work, on their own. There are many ways this can be addressed, but the outcome should be that it is fair and acceptable for both partners. This is about communication and respect for each other. Without that, there is no partnership. Lose him. Men like this get worse as they age, or they grow up and suddenly get generous with a new girl and make you feel like a fool. He is using you in some areas. Agree to splitting rent 50-50. Same with utilities, each are responsible for their own personal bills. Regarding groceries, that needs to be divided differently because of usage. It feels hypocritical because it is. So he's that guy. The guy that says one thing but does another, the guy that talks the talk, but doesn't walk the walk. Believe me when I say, this will transcend into other things once you move in. Do you think the housework and cooking will be 50-50? Not a chance. Do you think childcare will be 50-50? Not a chance. If you continue in this relationship you are setting yourself up for failure, because if you have to convince someone that they should be a decent human being, the battle has already been lost. Based on what he's told you, it sounds like you need to issue him an invoice. Your boyfriend is a stingy hypocrite. You're facing this issue now, but have you talked about if he wants it to be 50-50 forever? Moving in with a partner can have financial risks, and it's understandable if it takes a while to talk about who makes what. In the long term it seems like 50-50 doesn't take a lot of nuance into account. What if someone becomes a stay-at-home parent? What if someone loses their job? Good for you for figuring this out now. I hope whatever you land on works for you. I love when you say that it is about being a team and not only two individuals, even though both of you are independent. You decide to be together, and helping each other economically is something that couples do from the very beginning, like not always splitting the bill if the other has no money, etc. It does look like he is taking advantage, but you should talk to him first, give him your reasons and try to discuss the issue before jumping into conclusions. It sounds like what you think and what you have a hard time telling him are two different things. Have him read this post. It's exactly what you think, then discuss solutions. What you wrote here would most likely come out differently were you to explain it to him. Reading this post is from the heart, and all concerns are valid. What you have going so far will not work long-term in any relationship. If he's in for the long haul, he'll change some of his antics. Truthfully, someone that is thinking marriage doesn't act like this. Good luck. I thought that was normal 50-50. Yeah, definitely huge deal breakers. Bills should be split according to income. He's a greedy, selfish Every week, some woman posts on this sub with stories like, "I'm laid off and my husband still wants me to pay 50-50. I'm staying at home with our kid and my husband expects me to contribute 50-50 out of my savings. I'm hit with a huge medical bill and my husband says it's my responsibility." These women get stuck and take advantage of because their significant other only cares about money, not partnership and fairness. Your boyfriend is using his logic to be selfish, unfair, and not a full partner. If he were fair, he would paying for his share of food and utilities. You are absolutely correct that he is out for himself. He's a hypocrite and he wants to use you to reduce his living costs. Don't put up with this, he's going against his word to his own benefit. I think your boyfriend is twisting the 50-50 approach. I personally will always ask for the 50-50 split regardless of who's earning more etc., because well that's the fairest approach. However, if one party uses things more, eats more, spends more time on an activity etc., then it is absolutely reasonable for that party to pay more. Asking for a 50-50 regardless of the situation is just rude. However, please talk to him about how you feel. You must talk. And afterwards if he refuses to change then, that might be a deal-breaker. Maybe provide him a bill for all his missed expenses, p. Having been with someone like this it's a deal-breaker and gets old rather quickly. If he doesn't want to pay 50-50 then stop paying for him. Sounds like what's yours is ours and what's his is his. I bet he's also not a good tipper, just a guess. There is little in life less attractive to me than someone with no charity in his heart. Perhaps he will figure out a way to take all that money with him when he dies. People flat out saying he's using you are offering pretty poor advice. I can see his perspective but I also do understand that it needs to be equitable. He's not using you, he just doesn't see it your way, because I used to think like this too. Push your point across in the right way, explain yourself and see what happens. Then decide if it's really a red flag. My partner makes significantly more than I do. We're currently splitting 50-50 because we've chosen a lifestyle that allows us to do so. He's also set himself a reasonable budget and is saving everything else for the future and acknowledges that if there's an expensive activity he wants to do then he's going to have to be the one to pay. If he suddenly decided he wanted to live somewhere more expensive or get a more expensive car we would revisit the issue. The only thing we don't split equally is groceries. I tend to buy more of them because he works nights and only eats here 50% of the time. Since you two are not married, it really makes sense to split things 50-50 like you would with any non-romantic roommate. You are separate people. It is never a good idea to commingle income as ours if you're just dating. Why should he contribute more because he earns more and you get a break on rent because you chose a field that earns less? I don't think you can ask a significant other to take a financial hit for you, that's akin to a punishment. Maybe a spouse, but that's a separate discussion. On the other things like him not paying utilities and splitting food 50-50 even though he eats more, communication is going to be the only way through that. You need to be very assertive with your feelings. If that's a deal breaker for you, explain why very clearly. You should have a conversation with him. It might help if you brought a history of your expenses to frame how unfair his solution actually is to you. One thing I will mention is that a 65-35 split isn't a slight increase, it's changing from him paying an even split to nearly double what you pay. Reframing your perspective in this way might help you explain to him exactly why he's being unreasonable, unfair to you. For me this needs an honest conversation. Although I personally don't agree with the 50-50 split, it works for some couples when it's upheld by both and usually when the difference in salaries is not that large will yours be. His answer to your request for him to pay more for food because he eats more is also telling, it's not my fault. I could easily see this turning into any situation being not his fault. Does he use this line if you go out to eat? E.g. not his fault he orders surf and turf and you get pasta but you still have to split it 50-50? You need to sit down with him and get real about your expectations when it comes to finances, before you move in together. Go get a real man please. Those are all deal breakers. There's a name for guys like this. He's not paying 50-50. He's taking advantage. Get out. I think that once you're actually living together without two separate places 50-50 can better in some cases. We split according to income at first and it made my partner feel bad about their relative worth. The overall dollar amount was especially small considering the inferiority it caused them to feel. I know this probably won't be a popular opinion in this thread, but in our case it absolutely helped with self-esteem and was the better option. It's also worth noting that we live in a very cheap place relative to our income, so it doesn't make a real financial difference either way. As for your particular situation, I'm not so sure this is the case or what he's thinking though. It's not my fault I eat more, lol. Penny, you are a smart lady. Ask him how he expects you to pay for your 50% if you have babies and need unpaid time off work. Warning bells ringing so loudly. Listen to them and get out. Yes, his words and actions don't quite gel. He wants to earn more money and not be responsible for the actual costs that go into feeding him, etc. He sounds like a hypocrite because he is one. Have a look at how his family household does money, as that is how he was brought up. My overall feeling from your post is resentment and lack of communication and openness and a selfish attitude on his part. Bills for me were split in half, but food was based on eating the same. If he was eating much more, then he would have had to shop for it himself. You seem to be the giver and him the taker in this relationship. Are there any other areas that you feel you do more? Chores, shopping, sex? Have you talked about child care, schooling and all that stuff? I don't think either of you are unreasonable, you both have solutions that make sense. I don't think your boyfriend was being hypocritical for saying he'd be uncomfortable not paying his share when he has a paycheck, but was comfortable not paying when he literally couldn't. I also didn't expect rent from my partner when he was unemployed, but I certainly did as soon as he had an income. I make quite a bit more than my partner, I pay the whole mortgage, but otherwise we split 50-50 on everything. Pay for every other date night, etc. Food is one thing. I agree, if he eats a lot more he should pay more. But for living space I feel like 50-50 is fair. If you see a future here with him, it should not be a big problem. Yeah, it's definitely a team effort combined with individual goals and wants. ADM, my girlfriend makes double me and even approached me and discussed splitting my fire education between me and her. Even though she makes double me, I pay for any and all food, dates, hotel stays. BC I want to, should anyways. After fire I'll very likely be the only one working since she can't have a job in medical school, which I didn't know. As long as I can provide, which includes fun times too with separate on savings. I'm Gucci. I used to earn more, so I paid for pretty much everything and he used his money for his comforts. When I lost my income, we lost everything. In my opinion the rent part is inconclusive. I would personally have to notice or talk about the situation further, but the food part, what? He flat out told you to pay for part of his food, just because. Maybe you could try saying your thoughts, how you would be picturing it when the time comes, so he'll know and can consider.